You know, CanCon music of the 1980s had a lot to do with the videos that were presented. Like behind the tracks today, we're looking at a tragically hip song, or the hip, that video where there was the protagonist of the song is throwing matches into an open gas can, and it has to be one of their most important songs. It even got banned from Canadian radio for a little while because obviously after a hurricane that hit New Orleans, it will stop being played out of respect to the victims. So today we're going to be talking about New Orleans is sinking, and in brackets, I don't want to swim. The song by Canadian rock band Tragically Hip was released in November '89 as a second single from the band's first full-length studio album, Up to Here. Remains a Canadian classic. Now, they had put out an EP previous to this. Last American Exit was the big song from that. The song reached number one in the RPM Canadian Content Chart. It was also the band's first song to chart in the United States. The chanson is one of the band's signature songs and still receives constant radio airplay in Canada. Now, when performed upon a stage, the middle section of the song was typically given over to an extended jam in which lead singer Gordie Downie would perform a story or another song. You would go shaman. The most famous such version, commonly referred to as Killer Whale Tank, featured Downie improvising an extended story about working as a cleaner in the killer whale tank of an aquarium. It first appeared as a B-side on the band's '91 CD single for a long time running. In 2022, it was featured on a live album, Live at the Roxy. Now, it goes under, of course, the blues rock category, which you dabble in every once in a while, off MCA, 4 minutes, 17 seconds, and producer Don Smith. Now, Blowin' High Dough came right before as the previous single of '89, right before Boots Our Hearts, their first single in the 1990s in 1990. Another well-known version that is widely circulated as a live bootleg, Downie performed Joni Mitchell's This Flight Tonight, and the version which appears on the band's '97 live album Live Between Us. He also performed David Bowie's China Girl in the Beach Boys' Don't Worry Baby, like a mashup. This tradition has been used by the Hip as a workshop to test out and develop new songs, which have not yet been recorded. Several of the band's later singles, including Nautical Disaster and Ahead by a Century, began as bridge jams during live performances of New Orleans is Sinking. Now, you look at Woodstock '99, what he says, we're tragically hip. And the live albums really shows like Gordie shamanist type singing. Not to say he was shamanist like Jim Morrison, because saying Gordie Downie is sexual is like saying Mr. Dressup is sexual, but if Mr. Dressup was a rock star, he'd probably be Gordie Downie of the hip, because just like Mr. Dressup, he was always wanting his audience to have fun and dress up for whatever time it was. Now, in a 2000 poll conducted by Music Magazine Chart, New Orleans is Sinking was voted the 7th greatest Canadian song of all time. In 2005, it was named the 16th greatest Canadian song of all time on the CBC Radio 1 Series 50 Tracks, the Canadian version. In 2008, the song was ranked number 24 on CFNY's 102.1 The Edge list of the top 200 new rock songs of all time. From 2005 to 2016, New Orleans is Sinking was the second best-selling digitally downloaded 1980 song by Canadian artists in Canada, and the best-selling digitally downloaded 1980 song by a Canadian band in Canada. Now, October 2005, several radio stations, including CKQB FM and Chez FM, or CHEZ, temporarily stopped playing the song out of sensitivity to the victims of Hurricane Katrina, which had devastated the city of New Orleans in early September of that year. A lot of people believed this song was a prediction of what happened, so that's the theories going on. We're getting the lyrics pretty soon. Now, it was number 70 on the Canadian RPM single charts, number 1 on the RPM Canadian Content Chart, and on the Billboard Mainstream Rock Tracks, it hit number 30, which basically says it was resonated with a lot of Americans. Now, the opening 4 lines of the song kind of go back like a Cajun prediction. Bourbon blues on the street, loose and complete, under skies so smoky blue-green. I can't forsake a Dixie dead shake, so we dance the sidewalk clean. My memory is muddy, what's this river that I'm in? New Orleans is sinking, man, and I don't want to swim. Now, is he referring to a bad job, a bad relationship, a bad drug trip? We don't know. Colonel Tom we don't know what Colonel he was referring to. What's wrong? What's going on? Can't tie yourself up for a deal. He said, head north, you south. Shut your big mouth. You got to do what you feel is real. Ain't got no picture postcards. Ain't got no souvenirs. My baby, she don't know me when I'm thinking about those years. So he's kind of, going back in his mind about a situation where not involving his woman. Pale as a light bulb hanging on a wire, sucking up to someone just to stoke the fire. Picking out the highlights of the scenery, saw a little cloud that looked a little like me. Now, these next four lines are like the Bible of Tragically Hip. If, including me, when we get drunk, this is what we say the most. I had my hands in the river, my feet back up on the banks, looked up to the Lord above and say, hey man, thanks. Sometimes I feel so good I gotta scream. She said, Gordie baby, I know exactly what you mean. She said, I swear to God, she said, oh no, yeah. So it's basically, is it the song a tribute to his girlfriend, or basically he's on an ego trip? We really don't know. It's up to the listener. My memory is muddy what this river that I'm in. New Orleans is sinking, man, and I don't want to swim. And uses that word, swim. So, ladies and gentlemen, why do you think that Tragically Hip has been so popular in Canada? Because this song really broke them heavy, although Blow It High Do is a very important song. But after this, Locked in the Trunk of a Car, Nautical Disaster, I Come from Downtown, Born Ready for You. Now, a lot of people say, well, Canada doesn't have a culture. Canada doesn't have a national identity. Well, we've seen in recent months with Donald Trump bellowing up the 51st state. Good thing Gordie Downie is dead. If Gordie Downie went on national TV and he was still alive, he died of brain cancer a while ago. If he said, listen, Donald Trump, why don't you come to Canada and say that? Oh, you can't come to Canada, you're a fucking felon. See, you got to understand, ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump has been a pimple on the arse of Canada long before this 51st state bullshit. And this Barbie doll press agent who allegedly, I still can't prove it, she was like an OnlyFans customer, looking like a bad Bandy Rose, if you know who that is. Gordie Downie sang for Canada, like the troubadours for Canada, Ian Sylvia, Gordon Lightfoot, Neil Young, Joni Mitchell, well, Buffy St. Marie before we found out she wasn't really an Indian, Andy Kim, Burton Cummings, Randy Bachman. Do you see a parallel here is? Trooper. We're here not for a long time, but have a good time. The sun don't shine every day. There's no way some fucking orange devil in the States is going to determine us. And we see New Orleans is sinking, man, and I don't want to swim. He's not talking about New Orleans. He's talking about the States. He also predicted the rise of Donald Trump. The States is like New Orleans. You're sinking. And if the world didn't have Canada, can you imagine what the States would be going through right now? Good thing you border us, man, because half the people who border Canada didn't vote for Trump, or more than half. We see true stuff. With Donald Trump, we say, well, okay, you can, you're entitled to your opinion, but you're wrong. Well, we don't have to fight you. We don't take out a gun and shoot you, unlike some places in the States. I'm going to ask you a question, ladies and gentlemen. Do you think Donald Trump, what he's saying, is going to stop Canadians from not voting for Mark Carney? Poilievre is another Trump. That's another thing we know about. And if you look at the stats, most women are Tragically Hip fans, and ironically, it's a 60-40 deal. Most Tragically Hip fans are women, 40% are men, and ironically, 60% of women are not voting for PP, and 40% of men are voting for PP. So, and I call it PP, you know why? Think about it for a second. It's a double meaning. Look it up. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you're doing here with our Behind the Tracks, I'm learning the Americans is some little bit of our history. It's hard to believe a guy 170 pounds soaking wet who once said, what really pisses me off when I go into a bathroom and I pull down my pants and my pants go into the piss, left by somebody else, that's really pisses me off. Look it up on Much Music. So, ladies and gentlemen, New Orleans is sinking, man. Play it tonight if you never played it before. You can find it on YouTube. But that video, he's trying to throw the lighted matches in the gas can, Typical Canadian can't even do suicide right, when it comes to our bad vibes. Thanks for listening, and don't forget, give us a like, comment, subscribe, or share.